America is a country full of immigration in all its history. Modern America, not the continent, because there's Native Americans who were the original culture of America. That's been wiped out by immigrants from Europe coming over and, colonising it. Quite rich as a British person here talking about it, but caused it all over the world. South Africa, for instance, speak Dutch and English mostly, and many of their languages from all other tribes, but Afrikaans is a Dutch-based language. Cultures evolve over time based on the people who make up that country.
If you came here as a refugee, for example, where your identity has been stolen from you by the dictator in your country, and now you try to carve up your own little identity here in this new country, you push back against the local culture because you're trying to preserve your own identity. Are the host nations allowed to be a bit angry that they are hosting people who are refusing in some way, personally, in some way through a systemic problem, to integrate into their society?
I don't think people should really be getting angry about other people's heritage, especially those who've come from situations which are refugee situations, because they can't help it, and all we can do is have open arms to help people as one humanity. Yes, there may be issue with food, with feeding everyone. Yes, there's issue with housing everyone, but you know what, we've survived wars in the world, we've survived famines, we've survived lots of things already, and we survived that by working together, not hoarding things. The biggest issue in the world is greed, right? And the people who are there already probably have more than enough to share around, or they can live with 10% less. If someone's come over and really needs support, whether it's a bit of food, a bit of shelter, a job, pretty sure we could find something.
Some things are systemic, some things are personal, but what in the end it is, it's an amalgamation of so many different problems that cause division. Hi guys, and welcome to the Weekly Whistle with Ahad, your host. Today, on a wonderful Friday, I am here with James. James is calling in from the UK, and it is a wonderful time to be James today, because just yesterday, England just beat the Netherlands in the Euros semi-final, and it has been a very sad day here in the Netherlands, but you can see with James' big smile that in the UK it is the other way around, and I am not the one to spoil the fun, so I am happy to see James being happy. So James, why don't you tell me a little bit, how are you doing?
Sure, thanks, Ahad. Hopefully after Sunday I'll be happier, but I'm sure when this podcast goes out we'll know the final result, and it hopefully has come home.
It has come home, yes.
This might age really badly now. I'm good. Yeah, I'm great. Yeah, it was great to enjoy. I picked this time slot quite well, actually, because I didn't realise it was a football day before. But yeah, I'm quite lucky that we get to talk now and discuss about a lot of personal things and deep things on a human level, but also have a bit of fun about current affairs like football. So
it's wonderful to hear this. Yes, it's wonderful to see you again. We have been talking to each other before as well, and I'm really excited to see what you bring to the table. And yes, there's football. I also know your background in sustainability. That's also an area that I'm really interested in. Again, a question that we can ask ourselves there as well about why is that important on a personal level. So I really want to talk about those things. But first, just an introduction and get to know you a little bit, because even though I know you on a normal level, I don't know you. So I would love to know that. And before we do that, I just want to make a small introduction or like a summary of sort for the people who are listening of what is about to happen. So we are going to start with a short introduction and some tangents there about James and who he is, what he does, and why he's here. And then we're going to move on to more about understanding James's experience as an expat. So James has his own podcast and he loves talking to expats about their experiences and everything. And as much as that sounds cool and all the exhilarating activities that happen as an expat, the new journey, I want to focus basically on the research and the information that James has gathered and also his own personal experiences about the why people do these things. Why do you want to move countries? Why are you pursuing these opportunities? Why you want to put yourself in these kind of positions where you are uncomfortable and in an unknown place? And I really want to understand James' perspective on this. So those are the things we're going to be talking about today. So you can skip ahead to the part that you like. You can stay with us throughout the way. That is up to you. So you can decide that for yourself. But for now, James. Who is James?
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, and hopefully you're sticking around for this bit. It's the best bit, right? So I'm James. I'm originally from Liverpool in the United Kingdom, which is a very, very wonderful city. If you haven't been before, I recommend going. It's full of amazing architecture and sport and history and music. I'm also an engineer. That's my main 9 to 5 job. So I work in the automotive industry, working on making cars more efficient and fast, working on electric vehicles. And doing that meant, as you mentioned before, I had opportunities to move to Sweden to deliver my job doing aerodynamics for a Swedish car company. Now, alongside that, during COVID, I kind of felt a bit lost in life and wanted to understand, why we're doing stuff and probably quite perfect for this podcast, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I using my skills as an engineer to make cars which are just not good? So I started doing some soul searching and wanted to make my life a lot more environmentally friendly and working on my own personal carbon footprint. And then going for a springboard from that to make my work and, my life's work a lot more impactful from a sustainability point of view by, working in the industry which can make the next generations of products more efficient. Because, yes, the best thing to do is not buy anything, but people are still going to buy stuff, so why won't we make that things better? So that was the kind of reason why I wanted to go into sustainability, which is where I am now, really, just, working on making things more efficient. So that's a bit of my life, but also, as you said, I have a podcast about expats and living abroad. So when I was in Sweden, everyone knows it's dark and cold in the winter, and that's quite a depressing place to be. So I was talking to some friends from all over the world about how they've managed to survive. And from that, I, spun a podcast about providing advice for people who are going through tough times whilst living abroad, but also inspiring them to understand all the amazing things which is, living away from home can give you. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you're homesick. Yes, you're far away. But also you're seeing new things. You're meeting amazing people who've also made, the brave decision to live abroad. So there's such a yin and yang about it. And I wanted to kind of get that message out and give people the opportunity to get in touch if they want to know about living abroad, but also to listen to amazing stories like, you're going to be a guest on my podcast and share your amazing story about moving away from home and moving to the Netherlands. So I'm really looking forward to diving into your own story. So yeah, that's a bit about me, really. That's kind of the headline of me.
Yeah, and I have already so many things that I could really talk about here, right? Starting from the city of Liverpool, of course, and also moving towards sustainability. And I think in the theme of the podcast that we're trying now, we want to focus on that element of how we can bring the human out into the open. So first, what I really want to understand from you, James, is I really want to focus on the inner drive that you get from moving abroad. So why did you choose Sweden? I think that's relatively an easier answer because you got the opportunity, but more like, why did you want to leave home though?
I mean, yeah, Sweden was easy because I worked for a Swedish company. I also had job offers before I moved to Sweden for the Netherlands and for Germany. And when I was a student, I was looking at visa applications for New Zealand and Canada and the US. I think it all stems from, I was very lucky as a child that my parents would prioritize holidays abroad or holidays in general, traveling, rather than other things. So my family didn't have a fancy car. We didn't have lots of things throughout the year, but we always had a very nice holiday in the summer months. And I was very lucky that we got to travel quite a lot of the, lots of the world, lots of Europe, and see a lot of different cultures, different languages. And that was really the kind of kickstart to me of, being interested in different things. And I guess growing up when YouTube was growing, in the early noughties, you get to see a lot more about the world and understand a lot more and be inspired by things. And that really helped. And, I'm a person who's, takes in information from lots of different sources. So I was like, well, I want to go and see as much as I possibly can. It's really cool. The world's so big and I love nature. I always hiked and, national parks in America like Yosemite or Yellowstone, or going to Hawaii or, New Zealand and Tasmania and all these amazing places which are predominantly English speaking. I've always like, I want to go there and see all these places. So that was kind of how can I do that? And then okay, can I move my base to a different country so I can then springboard and travel more, go to all over Canada or anything like that. So that's the reason why I want to live abroad and have always wanted to live abroad. And then the look of just working for a company who had a headquarters in Sweden meant I could make it happen, especially since Brexit and visas meant were getting harder. When we're in the UK or as in the EU, it was really easy to move across because it was our right as EU citizens. Now it's not. So I really just doubled down and made sure it happened before I got old and regretted it.
That's first thing before we continue. All the parks that you mentioned, have you been everywhere?
No, I've only been to Yosemite, and I'm going back in a few months. I've been to a lot in the UK, but I watched a lot of videos about it because I like climbing and just hiking outdoors. So when I was traveling around America, I was like, I need to go to Yosemite. It's beautiful, and see the Sequoia National Parks, and this incredible landscape. Which you think of America, you think New York City, you think LA, you think big cities, or you think the Midwest, where maybe a lot of farmland, but you have these incredible national parks. And same all over the world, like in Peru, Patagonia, which is not just a clothing brand, it's also a very beautiful national park.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, because when you were saying like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US, Hawaii, I was like, my God, this guy, which Swedish company does this guy work for that he's going to all of these places so many times across the year in his young life? Yeah. So I was very, very excited to know about that. But yeah, you are planning to go to these places. You are excited.
Oh yeah, I want to see everywhere. Yeah. I want to explore everywhere possible. I had a dream about cycling around the world on a bamboo bike during COVID because it was the best way to see everything without making as small an impact as possible. So avoiding planes and cycling around where possible and getting a ferry or a bus or something if I needed to. That was my dream. Right? It's still my dream. I still want to do that. So.
Yeah, I've got fascinated with cycling when I was in university. And I was very, very scared because it was something that would take days, if not more, right? So I was like, and this was a very simple cycle from here to like another city in Turkey. And by car, it would have been like 6 hours or 4 hours. And by bike, it would be like 2 days. I literally had a plan ready, like with a bike and like a tent and everything. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm not going to do this because I can't do this. Because you also need conditioning, James. You also need conditioning. Yeah. It's not just that I can just hop on the bike tomorrow and I can go and it'll be like, look, I'm going to do cross country. I will barely manage. So you have to like practice a little bit and do it. So I do like the idea of just driving everywhere and just stopping wherever you want and just take a breather in and enjoy it. And I can completely understand. So I do understand the why now. So there's a why. There also comes from your childhood a little bit that your dad and your mom really like tried to instill that into you, that activity of traveling and then, let's go. It's important to us. Maybe travel. But why not travel to like why travel and put yourself in a discomfortable position or uncomfortable position where you are in a new place and you have to make friends all over again? Because personally, this is a really big thing for me, right? I have to move abroad. I moved abroad not for the same reason as you, but I will keep all of that for your podcast. So I don't want to like spill the beans, but the biggest struggle I was having was about friends. I was like, why would I leave all of that and move here and make everything so first, how did you make friends? The question, why would you want to start to do that, especially at an older age? Because the more older you get, the more difficult it gets to make friends. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, massively. This is something I talk about week in, week out, about, if you move not for a grad scheme, not for university, you are by yourself joining a already flourishing ecosystem of people and social networks, and you're just an addition. You're not in a group format. So it is difficult. You're right. The why I wanted to do it was because I would have regretted it if I didn't. And I knew I could always come home if I wanted to. But also it's a chance to find out who my friends back home really are, right? Because it's the ones that stay in touch and the ones that, you care about you, or the ones that will, you'll still speak to, or when you come back, if you do come back, you'll still speak to them, or might come visit you, or whatever, or you'll try to have a chat to once a month or something. So that for me didn't mean I didn't need to worry about my friends back home. My girlfriend stayed in the UK, which was the biggest reason why I didn't want to go at the time, because that was quite a difficult thing to have a long distance relationship, but we survived. But making friends abroad, yeah, it's really hard. I'm quite a social person. I'm really bad at being by myself. I overthink a lot of things. I get lost in my head, and it's not a fun place to be all the time. I ponder about life a bit too much on a negative side, probably. So I joined a sports team. I played volleyball, so I played volleyball quite a bit. Being quite tall, it helps. So I joined a local volleyball team, which was a lot of Swedes. So it meant I could listen to more of the language and be engulfed that way, because Sweden doesn't speak English as a first language, albeit they speak English very well, like the Netherlands do. So I knew I could join a sports club. I also joined things like Meetup, which is a great app, which allows you to go find people with similar interests to you, like hiking or going to theatre or writing or just doing a language cafe. So that's how I made friends, and just chatting to my co-workers or going to the pub to watch the football as we were chatting off camera. You know, I went and did things that I wanted to do back home. Like I'd go and find the local British pub that was just playing the Six Nations rugby, and I'd go watch that and, you know, be surprised that I'm cheering with a Irishman, a Welshman, and a Scotsman, and we're all just watching it, and there's no issues because it's just banter and it's a good bit of fun because everyone's left home and it's less tribal. That's how I kind of did it. And yeah, was it hard? God, yeah, it was awful at times. It was really lonely, but I knew I could always FaceTime my family or my girlfriend or my friends and get in touch that way, or I'd make myself go somewhere and try and meet people, right? It's hard, and if you're an introvert, it's really hard. But you know, you have a chance to be the friend you want to have. So a good bit of advice I was given by I can't remember who it was now. I'm terribly sorry, but was the best way to make new friends is to be a really good one to other people. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's really true, because then people will want to be your friend because you're so nice and you give all the energy for them, so they'll reciprocate.
I love that quote, but I'm confused because let me just unpack what you said. Right, the how was pretty clear. You already told me about the pub and enjoying football on the side. I think that, as you said, it's such a tribal experience, sports in general, that you just feel connected with the people around you quite naturally. Yesterday at this time of recording, I was at a meetup, and I'm not joking. I was just standing by myself for like 70% of the meetup because I just don't know what to do. It was a meetup about AI and everything because that's my field, and I wanted to talk to people. I really did, and I just stood there on my phone waiting for an opportunity, and then two young guys just came and talked to me themselves. They were quite interested in me, and it turned out that they could help me more than I could help them, but they were coming to ask me for help. So I do see the value of networking. But I'm an extroverted person. That's why I'm doing these podcasts. I can talk to you and everything. I'm pretty comfortable. But I cannot do that at networking. So if I could take this to a little bit of a tangent, just a little bit of tangent, just to learn a little bit from you, because you're a sociable person. How do you network? How do you make it so easy? You make it sound so easy that you just go to places and you just talk to people and you become friends. And like, what does it mean to be a good friend to other people? That's my question, because I consider myself a nice person, and I try to be there for people, but that's it. Nothing. It never materializes to anything. So I do want to know a little bit about that.
First of all, it's not easy. It's and I don't believe it's binary where extrovert, introvert is, you know, there's two camps. I think it's a spectrum, you know, and it all depends on your day. If you've had a hard day at work, or you're tired or whatever, or you're struggling away from home, you might want to just be on your phone. You might want to not be the first person to make the first move in that situation. It's normal. We all have those feelings, right? I've had them many times. I've been to meetups and, you know, frozen because I don't want to teach. There's like a group of 6 people having a laugh, and I'm just on the sidelines. Like, I don't want to disrupt them because they're already having a nice time, right? But then again, I thought, well, they're also here to meet people, and so am I. So if I go and get myself a drink or a coffee or a Coca-Cola or whatever we're doing, and just introduce myself, doesn't have to be anything more than that. It's like, hi, I'm James. I've been here for 3 months, 6 months. I work in AI. I work in this field, or I'm interested in this theory of it, part of AI. Nice to meet you. May I join in your conversation? And you can then sit in the conversation and just listen. But at least you're in the group then, and then hopefully someone is socially intelligent enough to invite you into a discussion or throw questions your way. but that might never happen. If that doesn't happen, then you also know that they're probably not going to be your friends. But you've gone and introduced yourself and you've tried. But also, if you're in a group and you notice someone on the outside, then invite them in. Especially if you're at a meetup, that's the whole point. If you're meant to, mingle in with people. So it's kind of there's no easy solution other than saying, just go and talk to them, because the worst thing they can do is say no, and you can just avoid them for the rest of your life because you're probably never going to see them again. And if you are, you apologise for it, right? And you just say, oh, sorry about the other night, I was really tired or something. Or you just try again, because all you can do is be polite and be smiley and whatever. And sorry, I interrupted you then. What were you going to say?
I think that's I think that's such a British thing that you're saying. Like, just be polite. And what's the worst that can happen? Like, British people are generally nice. That's a stereotype that you hear from people, right? The British people are generally very nice. So that's what I'm hearing when I hear you, because it's not easy to hear no, James. It's not easy to hear no. I don't know.
Of course not. No, it's awful.
It kills the piece of you inside. It's like, and it's not, as I said, it's not like I don't mind. So in this example, yesterday, there was supposed to be an open mic, and the reason I went there was for the open mic. So this tells you the confusion, the conundrum that I'm in. I don't like new places unless I'm on the stage. If I'm on the stage, I'm the most comfortable I am. So there was an open mic. There were like 50, 60, 70 people sitting there, and the guy asked like, okay, who wants to come up and share something, or like a challenge or an idea or whatever have you. And I already knew I wanted to do this, but I didn't want to raise my hand immediately because that would look needy, right? You want to play the game, the bit of the social game, right? So I waited a few seconds to see if someone wants to raise their hand or something, and then I would raise my hand. But for some reason, the host was such a bad host in that sense that they did not wait. They just like, anyone, no one. Okay, then I wish you a good day and let's just start networking. And I'm mad. I was like, it was my chance and I missed it. And now for the next 1.5 hours, I was 70% by myself, which is weird if you think about it. You're like, Ahad, you're a guy who is so easily comfortable to say that he can go up to an open mic and share a story, share a discussion, share a point, but you can't go into a group and do it. I just can't. If you give me a platform, I can talk. If you don't give me a platform, I can't talk. Or because maybe I'm just a bad listener then. So I just like talking. I don't like listening. So for me, it's very difficult to get into it. So that's the conundrum that I'm in.
Well, I think you're wrong. I think you're a great listener, and I think what's more likely is, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not anything. Just from my experience, that it's much easier to talk to other people in a group because it's not intimate. If you're talking on a stage and you're not seeing the reactions really closely, if you're in a group setting and it's a bit more vulnerable, that might be why you're happier on stage, because you've rehearsed what you're saying. You're not in a back and forth. It's you just throwing in a discussion. But also that might have helped your entire night if you got to go on stage and say, hey, I want to think about this or this part of AI, or neural networks or whatever. You might have then got people coming to you asking you questions, right? So that might be the perfect kind of icebreaker for you. Exactly. That didn't happen. So maybe what happened to you then, you were just quite annoyed at that, and then wanted to go in yourself to think about how can you're being very cerebral probably and trying to go in, how can I make something else to do this thing, rather than going, oh, you could have gone, oh, it's annoying that I had something to say at the start, but they were very quick. You just say it to the next person next to you and you start a conversation. Or go and talk to the host and be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I thought you'd give more time, but I have something to say, and next time, can I say it? I'd love to talk about something next time also. And then you've started a conversation already. That's your opening line. And then you can go, by the way, why are you here? And what do you do? Or what's your link to AI? And that could have been the way forward. And that's not being polite. That's going, oh, this is bloody awful,
I love how nonchalant, how easy you sound. It's commendable actually, because it's like, it's so difficult to make this work. I'll give you another good example. So I sometimes go work in a cafe just because I like being around people sometimes, and my wife and my child maybe are doing something, like my wife is saying that I need to clean the house, so just go away because you're not going to help. Or my mom is coming, I want to spend time with her alone, so just go away. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go away into the cafe. And in the cafe I'm sitting, and I'm just having my drinks and I'm working, and then I see someone sitting on the other side of the chair, other side of the table. But I'm not joking, I analyze that moment for an hour in my head first. That okay, I will analyze what they're doing. I see that they're struggling or there's something happening. I'm like, okay, now now it's my time to insert a joke slash icebreaker slash whatever have you, and then we have a good conversation. So I can do that, but then I need time. And if you do it on a meetup, you don't have time. So it's as I said, it's for me, it's a very cultural thing. I really see in the Western world, networking is so natural because it's a thing. Like Americans and British people, even the Dutch people I see, it's so natural because you guys are so like individualistic that you trust strangers relatively easily, right? And we don't trust strangers easily. So for us to talk to strangers is already a very big of a question mark. You're like, why would I talk to a person I don't know? I'd rather talk to family instead. So that maybe that psychological bias comes in, and I'm just like, I don't know. These kids were from university. I'm not even joking. University kids, master's students, who just came up to me, talked to me like, hey, you said something I really liked, and you want to ask a question about it. I'm like, why is it so easy for you? Why is it so easy for you? But maybe that's the case. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Completely, no. I think you're right. I think it could be a cultural thing for sure in terms of America. I'm being very broad here. It is quite a charismatic country, especially ones who travel and business and network. It's a lot of charisma. Britain to an extent, but we're a bit more subtle about it, I think, and we're a bit more standoffish than the Americans, but probably more so than other cultures because I guess we've been very lucky in growing up to be able to have the opportunity to talk to a lot of different people, and it's part of our education to some extent. But I think with you, what you're saying about having the time to analyze someone and make the perfect opening statement kind of thing, it's probably a testament to your own intelligence where you're trying so hard to say the right thing where anything is the right thing as long as it's done from the right place, right? So if you're saying it from a kind position or somewhere of curiosity to get to know someone or learn something or understand what they're doing, and it's not from a malicious place, then that's always going to be the right idea. That's always going to help you. I think a toolkit might be, if there's a toolkit out there to help, just simple icebreaker questions. It's kind of like a dating advice, right? But without the idea of looking for a partner. It's only just to talk to people. And it's equally as hard. Like making friends felt like felt like dating because you're trying to get to know someone. You're having the courage to do it, but in the same way, rejection is a natural part of it, or you're not going to make friends with everyone you meet. So I think just trying to be friendly enough and be kind, you'll have a better chance of making more friends or making deeper connections with people than you would do anywhere else. Plus, if you're living abroad by yourself or when you're a bit older with your family, you tend to make fewer friends but much deeper friends. So friends who might help you navigate your new country more easily with tax systems or government systems or the language and various other things like local festivals, and through chatting to one or two people about those more infrequent things but are quite deep into the culture or quite specific, you then have good friendships with them because you may have spent some time at the holidays together, or you spent Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever away from home, so you build a connection with people who you spent it with, and you're sharing your cultures with other people, and that's a really good thing to do as well because that's after that initial at the bar, at the cafe, having a chat with someone. But then, for instance, for you next time, if something's happening in the Netherlands, which is quite prevalent or in the news, you can just be like, have you seen this thing that's going on here? What do you think about it? I don't know what to think because I'm still quite new to all the culture side of it. Might not be the case for you, but that could be the case for whoever's listening to this right now. It's just that finding that small, I guess, springboard of conversation to pick up on. It can be anything. We're social creatures. We're humans, right? We're social creatures. Even the most introverted people still want to talk to people and make friends. So just embrace the awkwardness and embrace the embarrassment, and it's hard, right? And the first 5 or 6 times it'll be really awkward and really painful. But once you've done it 5 or 6 times and go, you know what, I'm still going home, I'm still going for a shower and going to bed, and I wake up tomorrow and go to work, no matter what happens, it becomes easier because you go, you know, win, lose or draw, you got work the next day. So, you know, you could spend your evening alone. You could spend your evening with two other people having a really good time, making friends for life. You could spend it meeting your future partner if you're single or whatever. You know, those are the options that you might have. Or you could, you know, just chat to people and never speak to them again, but you had a nice chat with someone. You know, it's up to you whether you want to act there or then. But, you know, there's that horrible saying of 100% of shots you don't take miss. So if you sat at the bar trying to make friends and talk to no one, you're not going to make any friends. So.
Yeah, indeed. But before I even say my part, one thing I really want to point out is when you said win, lose, or draw, I really thought you're gonna like move forward by saying, but it's coming home in anyway. So I really. So I was like, you're gonna plug that in somehow, but you didn't. So I wanted to plug it in for you. So that is good to hear. But I really loved what you have said so far. I genuinely think that it sounds like you have had a lot of experience with this, that you can be so comfortable with this, right? It's the same as a person who does job interviews a lot, right? It is also stressful. It is also scary. I just recently did a podcast on this myself, in which I explained that why, for me, job interviews are so natural now, because as a contractor, you have to do it a lot. Every few months, I'm giving job interviews. So for me, it's like second nature now. I don't get anxiety. I don't get scared of the person or something. So I think it's the same. It's like a muscle that you're trying to train. And that's what I'm hearing when I hear from you, that it's the muscle that you're hearing, and what's the worst that can happen. In my head, James, if you tell me what's the worst that can happen, as a voice screams, go like, you could die. You know, that's what that's what it sounds like. But I think after a while, it just becomes normalized, it becomes slow. So I do like that, but I do want to take this conversation a bit forward now from just friendships towards two things that you said that I really liked. One was malicious, like no one is malicious, right? And we are social creatures per se, so it's quite natural for us to connect with each other. When you're living in a new place, trust is a bit of a question mark, right? So I really want to focus on those things. And given what I'm seeing so far from you, like how I see you talk and everything, it seems like you must be a person who also relatively, maybe, of course, I can only assume, who trusts relatively easily as well, in the sense that, yeah, you don't think there's anything bad in the world. So have you had experiences or your stories from your podcast that you heard people about how they're navigating the trust barrier when you come to a new country? Because your country, when you're in the UK, you trust it. You trust the NHS to take care of you, for example. You trust your local police to take care of you. You trust things to work because it's your home. That's, you know what it is. But when you're in a newer country, do you trust that country? How do you trust what's happening there? And have you ever thought of this? Have you ever realized that it is something that you've taken implicitly for granted, that when you come to a country that you're like, oh, look, I'm in a European country. Of course, it should be full of trust, or something along those lines.
I mean, yes and no. So trust, I like to think everyone is inherently good. No one wakes up today wanting to really do harm to people, and if they do, then maybe they need to, you know, potentially be screened for any psychiatric issues or something. That's just me spurting nonsense out there. Please don't take that, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. But I generally believe that people wake up not wanting to do harm every day. They want to go home, be with their family, be with their loved ones, people they care about, be with their friends, whatever. Enjoy what brings them passion in life. People wake up wanting to do that. Now, when people get annoyed, it's when they believe that their passion is probably being met with an opposing passion. For instance, of sports teams is quite a common thing. Like we keep circling back to sports teams, but there's a tribalism in that sense. And, you know, in that situation, I just try and turn away and leave and go somewhere else, because I'm aware of hooliganism or ultras in Europe and things like that. And same in, you know, all of the, I don't go shaking everyone's hand and trying to be friends with everyone. I will, you know, assess the situation and go, they don't look like people who want to be bothered, so I don't bother them. You know, but that's where you choose things like Meetup. You try and engineer the social situation to be as in your favour as possible by going to popular places people meet. So for you, a cafe is probably a good place if people are working or chilling out, because it's not going to be a busy bar, which is a local bar where there's people supporting various things which you don't maybe know much about. So there's no point you going there. But if you go to a tourist part of town, or the local pub near you, or the local cafe or whatever, to chat to someone, you got a better chance there because you've done some kind of I guess statistical analysis on where's the best place to meet friends where you are. So the Meetup should be quite a high probability you're going to meet someone there who's not going to want to harm you. And yeah, I probably do overly trust stuff, but I've also heard many horror stories of reasons not to trust people. But then if I lived my life based on every single story of what could go wrong, I wouldn't do anything, because there's always a chance that something will go wrong. Yeah. And I wouldn't use an Uber. I wouldn't do X, Y, Z, because something's happened to someone somewhere. But they're usually the anomalies. And yes, you should be vigilant. You should always know the local phone number for the police department. You should always know the local phone number for anyone who can help you or have a way of getting out of places. That maybe is just a strategy if you are someone who's a bit more anxious to do that. No, okay, I've walked into this place. How can I get out if I don't feel comfortable? And always have that in your head. Yeah. But also, if you don't feel comfortable talking to someone, you haven't got to do that. But if you are looking to meet friends, you're going to have to talk to some people, otherwise it's going to be really hard. I know there's a lot of online communities you can really probably try and break the ice with, like Facebook groups or other things which you might be more comfortable doing first. You might be comfortable, joining a local Facebook group and asking people and starting chatting to people online where there's less jeopardy, and then agree to meet in a group in a public space if you feel more confident that way with people, or arrange a bowling night or something like that, or a movie night, or go to the cinema with people, go to places that are quite safe. That could be a way, if you are more nervous or apprehensive about doing that, then use the modern technology that we have in your favor to get to know someone first, and have that friendship already kind of started from a good place.
I really like your thought process, and that tells me a little bit about like how of an engineer thought process that you have as well, because you're also thinking the same along the lines that look, if you think about it, you're looking at this app which is supposed to be for expats meeting. So statistically, there's a chance that you're going to meet people who are like-minded. You're not going to, and it sounds like you also analyze the situation, not just like me, right? You walk in and you're like, okay, I can see that this person might not want to be disturbed, or this person is with a group and they're having their own fun about something which looks like an inside joke. I don't think I'll be really gelling here, so I'll just move somewhere else, and etc., etc. And indeed, that's good advice to know everything that you need to know about the country in terms of emergency numbers, also having people around you who might be able to guide you and navigate you if something turns out. But I really want to focus on that element, because right now what we're focusing on is building trust and making friends, which are like the first few steps of moving into a country, right? But what about immersing yourself in a culture? And this is going to be a bit of a difficult tangent, because you might be confused that suddenly, why am I like jumping full ahead in this element, in this direction? Because this direction I personally feel very, very strong about. And I think as a person who is an expat and also who has talked to so many expats, I really am curious to hear your opinion on this. What we are struggling with these days in a globalized economy is the lack of cultural homogeneity in a way, right? So I like to always give a good example of saying everyone is wearing blue jeans, right? Yeah. Everyone is wearing blue jeans. So it is quite natural for some of us to think, hey, look, you can see the culture being eroded, right? And you can imagine as an expat, are you enhancing that problem, quote unquote, or are you like actively trying to support that ground roots movement? And what I mean by that is, are you immersing yourself in the local culture, or are you just an expat hanging out with other expats doing expat things? And are okay, being okay with it. Now, this is something I personally struggle with. My wife is a second generation immigrant in this country, and she also doesn't have many local Dutch, like ethnically Dutch
Mm.
friends. She has a lot of local friends who are also immigrants who are also raised here, but they're not ethnically Dutch. They're ethnically Afghan or Pakistani or Turkish or whatever have you, but they're not ethnically Dutch. And when you ask them, they're like, they don't want to hang out with us. But if you ask them, they go like, they don't want to hang out with us. And then what you have now is you have a society of people where everyone is so fragmented because they're all like, we don't feel like one unit now. In certain
Mm.
cases, I blame the host nation. In some cases, I blame the expats or the immigrants or whatever have you in terms of assimilating appropriately. To give you an example, I'm a Dutch citizen as well, right? Because I've been here for like more than 5 years now. And I don't know the national anthem of the Netherlands. It is not a requirement. All right. And you can feel differently about it, that you don't need to know. This is not like, it's not nationalism, Ahad. It's like, yeah. But for me, yesterday's match, you were singing the national anthem, right? Everyone was singing the national anthem. And I was sitting there, I was like, why don't I know the national anthem? And I asked my other expat friends who also turned citizens, and I asked them, "Do you know the national anthem?" And they're like, "No, it wasn't part of the process." And I'm like, maybe this is the part of the problem, that you don't feel like you're assimilating, because it's not like you're assimilating. So I'm going to stop here before I keep going on this rant. I want to take your opinion onto it. I want to bring you into the conversation. What do you think about what I've said so far? And do you feel the same way as a local in the UK? Because the UK is also facing these things, right? We have so many immigrants and so much of a multifaceted culture there that people also feel like the British identity is being lost. But also as an expat moving to another country, did you see yourself immersing into the culture and you were like, I don't see the locals hanging out with me much, and no deeper relationships, no accustoming yourself with the cultures there, not really being involved, etc., etc. I just want to know those opinions.
I mean, first of all, if you're an F1 fan, you'll be very familiar with the Dutch national anthem because Max Verstappen keeps winning. So, unfortunately, I'm quite familiar with the Dutch national anthem. On your question, I think it all depends on the person. So, I think there are some systemic issues which make it harder, and I think there's also a personality issue as well, potentially, which you can then find the anomalies which break through the barriers of both kind of parties. But I think, from my experience of living in Sweden, where for instance, renting an apartment is very much linked to what's called a queue. So when you turn 18 in Sweden, you can join this queue and therefore get points towards renting an apartment, first-hand contract from whoever owns it. If you are an immigrant or an expat, same word for me, you move into a country, day 0, you have no points. Day 1, you have 1 point. Day 2, you have 2 points. So if you move when you're 30 and someone has been on a queue since they're 18, they've got 12 years of queuing to get the best apartments in the city. So if you're new to a city, you either have to get a second-hand contract, which is more expensive, and therefore people can't always afford it, or you have to move somewhere else to get a first-hand contract, where you'll mainly find other people in your situation who can't live where they want to live because all the locals who've been on this queue for a lot longer have got them. So you end up having people either living who have got money where they want to live, or people who have queued long enough to live there, and you've got people who are new to a country or can't afford to live anywhere else, living in a different place. And that tends to be people who aren't local living in the place they can't afford to, or haven't got enough time in the queue to get what they want, so living in one place. And you've got locals who've parents who've put them on the queue when they were students to live somewhere else. So you have this divide in a way of locals and non-locals. That's a systemic issue, I think, and it also comes across with refugees and things moving in the same area because that's where social housing is. And in Europe, you've had waves and waves over the many decades of refugee crises, which have meant that people have come into Sweden from the Balkan nations, and more recently Syria and Ukraine. So the more likely to be in the same neighbourhoods because that's where the social housing is, and therefore it's going to be harder for them to integrate with people. Similar, what I was living was generally used for people who were staying for work who who weren't from the country, because it's all I could get, because I couldn't get a normal property. I had to go get this kind of long-term Airbnb property, which was a lot of people like me who had moved to the country to work at the company I worked at or the parent company in order to have somewhere to stay. And yes, it was quite expensive, so it was hard in that sense. But it meant that my neighbours were from different parts of the world, not Sweden. But on a personal level, because I played volleyball with Swedes and my colleagues who were Swedish, I tried really hard to try and speak the language, to learn about it. I was very lucky my friend Victor helped me out a lot, be my postbox and things, and helped me get my national ID. But if it wasn't for him and certain people who were local who were very accepting of me, because I, showed a lot of interest in what they were doing in the society, asked a lot of questions about the culture, like, why do you have cinnamon bread, or why do you have canalbalo, it's called, or what is midsummer, which is the kind of celebration in the middle of the year? What is it? Shall we go? I want to go. So I was looking to go experience the Swedish midsummer with my friends and go to the lake house, and I felt like I was very much part of the culture in that sense. However, I felt bad because my Swedish was very, very poor, in fact, non-existent, really. And they were all Swedes, and it was me and my girlfriend who were the only, English natives, and they were speaking Swedish amongst themselves, but with us English. So it kind of felt like we weren't really there. But if we'd stayed there a few more years, maybe we'd have learnt the language a lot more and be able to converse with them. But you still felt a bit outside. But that's the thing. Language barrier is a huge issue. But also, like, when are one of the holidays that you're celebrating, it's a good way of sharing your culture. So you were saying about blue jeans earlier on. I think we're getting a lot better at it, especially what I'm seeing in the industries I'm working in. We celebrate, a lot of religious festivals regardless of the religion. We celebrate a lot of local festivals regardless of the heritage. As we're getting a lot more global, we're very much aware of diversity and inclusion. So, if there's a local day from the Netherlands, whether is it the Orange Day, where it's about William of Orange, or, everyone wears orange and goes in the canals or whatever and has a lot of fun, that could be something you celebrate all over the world if you've got a lot of Dutch colleagues. Or if you are, for instance, if you're from Pakistan yourself and there's a holiday coming up, you can start saying about it in work, like, hi, by the way, next Thursday is X day, it means X, Y, and Z. I'm celebrating by bringing in these local delicacies from my country, which, what we have this time of year, and you can start a conversation and start sharing the culture around that way. That might be a solution, but it's difficult for the individual to do that, and it's a brave individual who will do that. But it all depends on where you work and your environment. And I'm very lucky that I work in a field which is very inclusive and is full of many amazing people from all over the world. Now, if you're working in retail, it's probably more difficult to do that because you're serving customers all the time and you're not, in the local place. But your break room could be a place where you've decorated it in a certain tradition or certain festival. These are just ideas off the top of my head. Like, it's not something which is concrete or anything, but I think that could be a way of supporting that and sharing culture and staying curious. I'm a person who likes to be curious. I like to ask a lot of questions, understand a lot more. I love how languages kind of evolve with each other, and you get these like random words where someone will be speaking a load of German or Italian and then say an English word because there hasn't been an Italian or German word made yet. And, like email or something might just pop in as an English word, but they're speaking another language, and things like that. I really quite enjoy just like these nuances of culture which evolve over time, and maybe where the English language is at fault for a lot of things, but I know Brits and Americans are not renowned for speaking many foreign languages, but I like to be the one who makes a difference, and I try and learn languages, albeit very difficult. It's very difficult to do so, but at least I try, and I think that's what's helped me make friends, is that I've shown a lot of effort in trying to develop myself in the culture, whether it's local traditions or local language or local forms of respect and things like that. What we don't always shake hands everywhere. Swedes hug as opposed to shake hands. So just knowing these things and embracing it in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was a big rambling on. Sorry.
I enjoyed it. I love hearing authentic stories of people, and of course, I will still push you back a little bit because you still didn't answer the question that I really am looking for. So you will get a round two now. So that will be fine. But I do wanted to have some pointers before I give you that round because I really think it's also important to address that. But I really resonated and I really enjoyed your drive to learn because to be fair, and when you were saying those kind of things, I'm joking when I say that I felt attacked because I've been living here for 5 years and I don't know Dutch, right? It's just because it's so difficult to learn the language. My wife is Dutch speaking, but she is an immigrant, so she doesn't talk to me in that language because we met each other 10 years ago when we were speaking English. So she's like, I cannot look at you and now speak Dutch. I just cannot. I've been speaking to you in English for 10 years. It doesn't change. I'm like, but we need to make it change because everyone laughs at me saying that you have a Dutch wife and you don't know Dutch. That doesn't make sense. For people who are immigrants or expats who move here, they have an excuse because people around them don't speak the language, but you have a person at home who speaks the language. So it is difficult. And I know people here who've been living here for like 20, 25 years and they don't know the language because they don't need to know the language. That's their argument, and that's what I also am struggling with when I talk about these things. And when I hear you say that you particularly take an effort in trying to learn the local culture, and I think that's also a sampling bias when we talk to each other because we are expats, and not just that, you are a social expat, so you are already by just inclination a person who's more interested. That's why you explore, that's why you go to different countries, that's why you do these things. So you will be always more inclined to go and learn new cultures. But if you came here as a refugee, for example, where your identity has been stolen from you by the dictator in your country, and now you try to carve up your own little identity here in this new country, you push back against the local culture because you're trying to preserve your own identity. You're like, wait, I am Syrian, or I am Afghan, or I am Iraqi. I am that. I need to be that. And that leads to a struggle of sort that, okay, what identity supersedes the other identity? Because the people who host you, or where are you from? And when you have kids, just like my wife is a second generation, so who is she? Is she Afghan, though she's never been to Afghanistan? Is she Dutch? She lived here her whole life. Well, who is she? And that's the struggle that I usually get when I talk to her and I talk to the locals here. Because as you said, it's some things are systemic, some things are personal, but what in the end it is, it's an amalgamation of so many different problems that cause division. And the reason I'm asking you these things, and I told you it's more of a different tangent to all the happy-go-lucky conversation that we're having, is to understand from me personally and people who have been in your podcast, and you also from your own experiences, and also said you're living in the UK. Don't you think the host nations are allowed to be a bit upset? And that's a difficult thing to say because we all protect diversity and inclusion all the time, right? We're saying we're diverse. But when I hear people in the UK being a bit annoyed, people in the United States being a bit annoyed, people in the Netherlands being a bit annoyed, I am one of those expats who takes their side and people go like, are you stupid? And is what they're saying, isn't that discriminatory or isn't that racism? I'm like, it is. But it's still coming from somewhere. And again, I'm a very obsessed with the why. Right? I want to understand why it's happening, right? And then that's the quite interesting thing for me. So how do you feel about what I said, that are the host nations allowed to be a bit angry that they are hosting people who are refusing in some way, personally, in some way through a systemic problem, to integrate into their society?
I think that people who get annoyed at, especially refugees and people who've come from war-torn areas, they can get over themselves because it's, I would never even dream to think about what it's like to be forced away from my house and my home and my family and where I grew up. It is impossible for me to actually comprehend the difficulty that people have had to go through in order for that situation to manifest itself. So I think it's pure ignorance from people in the host countries who get annoyed at that. Yes, it's it's a change. You have to be aware of that. You have to think about that, but also you have to, sympathize with it. You can't empathize. You haven't been through it yourself, but you can have some sympathy for what someone else is going through, and think, it's their idea of hell, because they don't want to be here as much as you probably don't want them to be here if you're that kind of person with that kind of attitude. But look at America. America is a country full of immigration in all its history. Modern America, not the continent, because there's Native Americans who were the original culture of America. That's been wiped out by immigrants from Europe coming over and, colonizing it. Colonialism, and it's quite rich as a British person here talking about it, but, caused it all over the world. South Africa, for instance, speak Dutch and English mostly, and many of their languages from all the tribes, but Afrikaans is a Dutch-based language, and English. We can't possibly. People can get annoyed, but there should be, since cultures evolve over time based on the people who make up that country. So in 3 or 4 generations' time, your child will have become, if they stay in the Netherlands, that is, Dutch for 3 generations. That's more than my family in the UK. My family come from Ireland and Spain. So I'm less English than in 3 generations that your family will be Dutch. But, and that's the case for a lot of people all over the world, is that people move around. I don't know if my ancestors were English, so therefore I was, maybe not involved in the colonization. But because I'm British, then it's inherently linked to me. And when I go to America, they accuse me of, or say they beat the British when it was Independence Day. Well, no, the British beat the British because the people who, had the revolution were also British, but because the founding fathers came from Europe anyway. And I think it's quite weird. I've gone in quite a weird way here, but what I'm getting back to is I don't think people should have the right to. Well, everyone has a right to be annoyed at something. I don't think people should really be getting angry about other people's heritage, especially those who've come from situations which are refugee situations, because they can't help it. It's impossible, and all we can do is have open arms to help people as one humanity. Yes, there may be issue with food, with feeding everyone. Yes, there's issue with housing everyone. But you know what? We've survived wars in the world. We've survived famines. We've survived lots of things already. And we survived that by working together, not hoarding things. The biggest issue in the world is greed, right? And the people who are there already probably have more than enough to share around, or they can live with 10% less. If someone's come over and really needs support, whether it's a bit of food, a bit of shelter, a job, pretty sure we could find something. We should be sure we need, since Brexit, we've had a huge, reduction in people applying for roles in hospitality, which we need. So if we've got people coming over as refugees, great. We can provide education so they can get jobs in the industry where we don't have people filling those jobs in initially, and over time, they will become part of our society and really, help it and be part of the fabric that is, humanity of we are a social group. We want to help each other. No one is better than everyone else in that kind of sense. Probably quite a Swedish thing of what I'm trying to say, but on that last bit about Sweden, they offer you 500 hours of Swedish language lessons when you move to the country. So they help you integrate in that way. Now, it's not always easy, but that's something that the country offers as part of your when you get your ID card. So even if you got a visa, you then are eligible for 500 hours of Swedish learning.
Wow.
To help you on that way, right? To help you get in. And on your topic of language with your Dutch, now, how old is your child?
Oh, not even one. One this Sunday.
Okay,
actually.
So when your child is starting to learn Dutch, you should start to learn with your child. Read the books in Dutch that they've got. Talk to them about it. Have conversations, because if you've been learning Dutch for 1 year, you are a 1-year-old in Dutch because you've only been learning it for a year. You're the same level of language. So if you were to speak to your child in Dutch as they grow up. They'll probably go faster than you because their minds are sponges, but it will help your Dutch a lot. I believe so anyway. So
Yeah,
that is
definitely.
when I went to Sweden, I went to the local library and got children's books so I could learn the simple version of the language, because I was not naive enough to think I'm going to read, Shakespeare in Swedish. No, it's hard enough in English, but I can read, Winnie the Pooh or something, because it's a simpler text.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Although we are closing in, and I do want to close it in, but I do want to share some thoughts. Of course, I really appreciated your honesty. I really enjoyed your statements, and I completely agree. The countries that I am personally talking about right now have more than enough to share. They have more than enough to distribute. They have a history that they can overwrite now by doing the good deeds. That's all fair. It's all fair and valid and everything. But as I said, not just in podcast, but in my life in general, I'm thinking on a very human level now, right? And as you said, us versus them is it's a natural tendency. When you are with your Swedish friends enjoying midsummer and they start talking to each other in Swedish, you feel like the other. Even though they don't mean it, even though you know that they don't mean it, you feel like the other, right? And from that sense, that sympathy and empathy that you ask them to show to the refugees, I would also like to think about that we can turn it around. And not specifically from the refugees because they've gone through shit, but it's not just refugees here, right? So in the Netherlands, you have Turks and Moroccans as the biggest uh, second ethnicities after the ethnic Dutch, and both of them were not immigrants. Like both of them refugees. They were not refugees. Those two countries are not war torn. They came here for labor and then they stayed here. And these are like second or third generation of their children now. They came in like the 70s or the 60s, but they refused to integrate. They argue that it's not us, it's them, and they argue no, it's not just this them. And you can say some of them are integrating, some of them are not integrating, whatever have you. I'm not picking sides here, but I do get a statement when a white Dutch person walks on the streets and they see more color, and I mean that positively, more color, more spices, more culture around them than normal. It is quite natural for them to be afraid. That's all I'll say. And that's what I really like to focus on. I don't think it's right to be xenophobic, but I understand where it comes from. And again, just my personality is that I go like, if you meet people where they are to understand their point of view, you can drag them up a little bit and can make them come midway. But if you're refusing to even go there, right, that becomes a problem in itself, right? And that is exactly what I feel like it happens in general. But this can go on for hours, and I do want to wrap it up. So I will leave. Of course, I say this, so I can't not give you the floor. So I do want you to have the closing statement. Tell me a little bit about what you felt in general, all about the podcast as well, like generally what you felt about today's conversation. And also, this is something I'm trying out, but if there is something you just like to add yourself that we didn't talk about, and you feel like it would be a good addition, feel free to do that. I think instead of me asking questions all the time, it's also nice to just hear from other person what they are thinking in general, even though I didn't get to ask. So the floor is yours, James.
I mean, thank you for sharing this wonderful conversation. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. It's been very stimulating for me intellectually as well. Just to riff with you about different ideas and different topics. And I agree with you in a lot of things. And we are scared of change, right? No matter how much we want it, we're always going to be scared of change, especially if it's in our home where we're most comfortable and most domicile, perhaps. And if it starts to change, you start to get scared. If you're traveling, it's all changing, and you're used to expecting to see lots of different things, different cultures. But when it's where you're from, it's a lot different. I completely understand that, and I agree with that. I think it's hard for me as a as a white British person to complain about anything or to have a viewpoint on this stuff because I'm incredibly privileged. I'm aware of that. I've used it to my advantage to be able to travel and speak my own language all over the world because people will learn my language because it's a language which is, for some reason, very popular for international trade. because of something which I had nothing to do with because I wasn't born, but I got very lucky where I landed on day dot or t=0, right? The one thing we can't control in life is where we start. Literally, is impossible. You can't choose where you start life. All you can choose is from that day on how you interact with the world around you. So that's what annoys me with people who get upset with other cultures, other things. No one chose where they were from. It's literally the only thing which is impossible to choose. So, we all need to be a bit more, have that in our mindset. I think so. And that's what I would think people need to think about is, I didn't choose this body, I didn't choose this personality. Well, I use it to think of things, and no one else chose it. I'd be so unlucky that if I went back again, I'd get myself twice. That kind of thing. But we all need to think more about that and have that in our mindset that you and I are talking now from different backgrounds. We didn't choose to be there, but we chose to be on this conversation together, chatting about it. And that's something which, people should be measured by their choices, not by their backgrounds, and, what they choose to study or learn or have a passion for. And that's a great way of making friends as well, because you're removing the barriers and just looking at the actions people have taken. I'm sorry, I'm probably not answering your question at all or anything. I'm just talking absolute tripe. But I think I have a point. I think I have somewhat of a point. But I think that you are doing a great thing with this podcast in asking quite tough questions, questions which do get people thinking, and the answer's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's there's a spectrum to it all, and there will be people who disagree with me, which is fine. You may have your opinions. That's what makes the world wonderful, right? It's the diversity. If you all agreed with me, it'll be all the same thing, and it'll be all, one side or the other. So, people do have opinions and may think I'm, an idiot. That's fine. That's their opinion. I don't mind, as long as it comes from a place of understanding of where I'm coming from. You may have your opinion, disagree with me. That's fine. Let's have a beer or have a coffee and talk about it. We can all grow together, right? But I want to end my last point to add to your conversation of, I would encourage you to look at Singapore as a country and how they manage the local neighborhoods, because I think when I went there in 2019, I went on a walking tour and I was told something, and I never actually fact checked it, but whoever's listening, if you want to, please do fact check this, that the Singaporean government, I think, had a rule about there needed to be a minimum amount of people in each neighborhood from each part of the world, right? Well, each kind of ethnicity that was living in Singapore, because Singapore was quite a country of immigration as well. So you'd have Malaysian people from the same landmass, you'd have Chinese, you'd have British, you'd have people from all over the world coming over, and they would try, maybe not always succeed, but try to have all the neighborhoods having a minimum mix of different ethnicities living, wow, using the same shops, using all this stuff. And from my experience of that, it was quite a positive impact from listening to the tour guides, listening to the locals, what they were saying. Yes, you have Little India, Little Chinatown, all those places. But I'm pretty sure you have people from other ethnicities living in those places, not just India, not just China. So I would encourage a bit more research on that if you want to go out with the show notes. But I believe that's what they do, and that's worked there. I appreciate it's a very small country because it's basically one big city. It's a principality in itself, really, I suppose. But that, to me, seemed like a good way that government could not force people to talk or force people to get along, but by encouraging that kind of social mixing, and you'll see people at the shops, you'll be involved in what people order or eat, on how they kind of integrate from what they've grown up learning. You will not be so shocked by it. It will not be such a change to you in that sense, which I think is probably the reaction, is people reacting to a change in quite a short period of time. Yes, sorry, I've rambled on.
I still love it. I love when people, because when they ramble, I see authenticity, I see excitement. I see energy, and I really enjoyed your last example because I think that is indeed what we need. Although people will not be okay with it, and that's a topic for some other time. That social engineering done by the government is also social engineering, and you might not have a say in that, but you have to be okay with it. Like you have to be okay with giving taxes. You have to be okay with not bearing arms in most of the world, and be okay with the government having arms, right? Like so, you have to be okay with these things a little bit, and I would like to end it here because we can go on for hours. You already said so many things that I'm like, oh, I need to talk about this, but it is getting sundown here in the Netherlands. It will get sundown there as well, probably. I think
Yeah.
slowly. Yeah, so I would like to thank you so much, James, and I think this was a wonderful conversation. Although one thing that you said, I really enjoyed, but I also do have a different viewpoint that I wanted to mention just before ending it, is that we have come full circle to your personality from the start of the conversation, to the fact that you think that people can disagree with you and yet you can have a beer with them and chat with them and grow with them. This tells me again how, how sociable you are as a person, that for you this is so easy. For most people, if someone disagrees with them, they will walk away. They'll be like, you know what, I don't want this, I don't need this. I will just walk away and go into my own bubble or go home or do something, but not sit next to the person who is disagreeing with me at this moment in time, because I just don't think I have the bandwidth for it. But you do.
Mm.
And I think this really makes a really nice circle from the whole conversation.
Yeah, just on that, I think that's probably the issue with the world now. Is look at social media, and people are only looking for people who agree with them, and you're not getting both sides of the story. So I actually encourage the opposite side, so I can learn and grow and form an opinion. Which is why I've never always been that way. I've just decided to start accepting it, and not everyone's nice, but as long as they don't hurt me physically, I'm all right.
It is difficult and it is brave, because I also feel the same. But I am a very intense. I don't want to say debater because that might have a negative connotation to it, but more like a discussion partner or a sparring partner. That's the feedback I've gotten from people, that they say that it doesn't feel like you are discussing, it feels like you're debating. And I'm like, well, the intention is the same. The intention is to learn, but yes, I can get intense sometimes. So that's why it's a bit scary to encourage this behavior in general. But I completely agree with you. I feel like if you can sit together, talk it out, understand each other, and if you leave that table together knowing more than you did when you sat together, I consider that a win. And that is what I consider this podcast, because I got to learn from you. I got to grow as a person. Albeit maybe I will not put those advice in action anytime soon because it is still difficult for me. But I still got to learn, and I still got to have a lot of fun for more than an hour. And I think that already is a testament to your personality, James, that I'm having so much fun that I don't want to stop. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to coming on to your podcast next time so that I can get to talk to you and enjoy our conversation on that side.
So that sounds amazing. And just to add to your thing, it's okay to say I don't know if someone asks you a difficult question. You haven't got to have an answer.
Wonderfully put. Thank you so much, James. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.